Hi folks, and welcome back. After finishing our cube's movement, we'll dive a little bit deeper with a new assignment. Let's take a look at a new panel. Here on the right, we have a display tab opened where we see a couple of layers created. Right now, we're still looking at our cube, which is in layer 1. Here, next to our layer name, we have 3 boxes with different letters. The first letter, V, stands for visibility. So if we turn that off, we will hide all objects that are in that layer. In our case, that would be our cube. Then we have P, which stands for playback. And if we turn that off, we will hide the objects during our playback. And then in the final box, we have an option for T, which is template, so we can see our object in its wireframe mode and we can't select it. And finally, if we click again, we get a letter R, which means reference, so we can see our object the way it is, but we can't select it. These different options are very helpful when working with a bigger scene and with multiple objects or characters, so we can add them to different layers and make our work a bit more organized. Let's turn off the visibility of our first layer and turn on the second one. Currently, nothing has shown up because this layer was empty in order for us to learn how to add some objects to a layer or remove them. First, we need to create an object, which we will then add to our display layer. This will be useful in the future when you want to improve your scene and add some simple props to make your animation a bit more interesting. Go to Create, Polygon Primitives, and here we have a few options to choose from for the shape that we want to create. But let's choose a sphere. We can right-click on a layer which we want and choose Add Selected Objects. You can also see here we have an option to remove a selected object from a layer if we ever want to. Now our object is inside layer number 2, and we can make sure of that by checking its visibility. Also, a quick way to create a new layer out of already selected objects, if we didn't have an empty one like we do now, we could select this little button on the far right. This would save us some time. But in case we ever need to create an empty layer as well, we can choose this button with a little plus sign. Let's position our sphere on the ground as we already know how to. Now let's make a couple of copies of our object. Press Ctrl D to make a copy, and then drag it out. Ctrl D, make another copy, and drag it out. Then select all of them. Hit S to save a key on the first frame, then go to another frame and move our spheres to the right. When we play our animation, we see the same thing as before. All our spheres slowly start moving at the beginning, then they speed up, and finally slow down again before reaching their final pose. We can see in our graph editor that Maya created its default curve type with a slow out at the beginning and a slow in at the end. To truly see and feel the difference between the different types of curve, we'll change each of these spheres' curve to a different type and compare them next to each other. We'll leave the first one as it is in its default type. Now, let's set a second one to a linear one. If we scrub the animation, we can see how the second sphere starts to move way faster than the other ones. Then they start catching up and go past the middle one, but at the end, they all reach their final pose at the same time. Now, let's change the third sphere's curve to have a constant speed out and leave a slow in at the end. When we scrub the animation, we see that our last sphere stays ahead almost the whole time, and then slows down before the end and the others catch up to it. Try to play with these curves and get a feeling of what these changes do. For example, if we move our tangents and zoom in on the graph editor, which you can do by holding down Alt and Shift and right mouse button dragging either horizontally or vertically, and to move around your graph editor, you need to hold down Alt and middle mouse button, just like in the viewport when you want to pan the scene. So if we look at our curve from the close-up, we can see our curve value actually goes even beyond our final position and overshoots it. We can see that in our viewport as well. Our sphere goes further than the rest and then backs up. All right, now that we've covered all these things, let's move on to the final task. Hide the second layer and turn on the visibility on the third one. Here, we have a bowling alley. Let's take a look on the left side of our viewport. Here, we have an outliner, where we can find a list of all the objects that are in the scene, no matter whether they're hidden or not. We can all find them here if we need to. So we have our cameras, which lets us look at our scene from different angles. Then we have a cube, which we've animated before. We also have our spheres, and then we have this group. By clicking on the plus sign, you'll see what's inside the group. So you can see we have our bowling ball, the track, and all the pins. So if you ever feel that you can't find a certain object in your scene, you can always look at the list, select the object that you're looking for, and then hit the F key to frame on that object. And while your object is framed, if you try to orbit around the scene, you will actually orbit around the framed object and not the scene center as you normally would. To go back to a default view, hit the Home button. Okay. So try to have some fun while animating this scene. Move the ball, set some keys, use the rotation, and use the whole scene. Perhaps the ball can move not only in a straight line, but in an arc. It can go fast, it can go slowly, or fast at the beginning and slow down. Try all the different ways. Don't forget to throw some pins up in the air. Also, when animating the pins, if you don't like the way the pin can be rotated around its center, you can change its pivot point position by selecting the object, pressing the D button to enter a pivot moving mode, then move the pivot to the place you want by dragging the arrows, for example to the top, and then hit D again to leave from that mode. Now if you rotate it, you'll see that the pin is now rotating from its head. All right, good luck with this animation, guys, and I'll see you next time.